Good afternoon, everybody. Here we go. We're going to give you a quick overview, introduce the session, introduce myself and Ben. I'm Parag Shah. I'm the VP of Data over at CarGurus. If you go straight outside and look left, you'll see our building at 1001 Boylston Street. Ben?
Yeah, Ben Kasdon. I lead a number of product teams over at CarGurus.
Anybody in the room familiar with CarGurus? Anybody use CarGurus? Oh, excellent. Love it. Okay, so the first thing we're talking about is kind of who we are. We're the #1 most visited site in the automotive marketplace space in the US. We have over 40 million monthly visits, and we're offering the largest selection of vehicles nationwide and consistently ranking highest among car shopper apps and listing sites in dealer ROI, lead quality, and customer satisfaction. What we do. We connect buyers to dealerships. So if you're going out and you're looking for a car, we're going to connect you to a dealer who has that car. We want to empower our car shoppers to find, research, and purchase vehicles easily. And for dealers, we deliver actionable data insights, AI-driven optimization, a suite of innovative products to help maximize margins and market inventory more effectively and drive high-quality leads. CarGurus has been an AI and data company essentially since its inception. The first time that we really launched something that could be considered machine learning was our IMV release back in 2010. It's also when the data science team was established. And in 2022, I think you'll all remember that this little thing called ChatGPT surfaced and started to go global. And it gave access to LLMs to everybody and a chat interface. CarGurus, at that point, started realizing we need to build a Gen AI team, and we would like to get into at the time, the ChatGPT plugin marketplace. In 2024, we started to launch AI search development, and we established our AI Forward team. This is something we'll talk a little bit more about later in this presentation. And then where we are right now, we rolled out AI access to our entire company. So everybody at CarGurus now has access to an LLM. They have access to prompts, prompt libraries, and we give them the ability to learn about AI and learn about prompting and learn about these new skills, these skills that, let's be honest, not a lot of people had prior to 2022. Even then, it was a very small group of people. We also launched our AI Coding Week, where we stopped all of our coding work for an entire week. We brought on a few coding assistants, and our entire engineering team started using those coding assistants for that week to experiment and to play with it. And this was one of the ways we started to drive engagement and adoption. And then this year, we released our AI-powered search, and we're going to talk about that right now, and I'm going to turn it over to Ben.
Awesome. So again, my name's Ben, product leader at CarGurus. Lead a number of different functions, but most relevant here, I've been fortunate enough to be involved in some of our early efforts in leveraging generative AI to help kind of evolve the consumer shopping journey at CarGurus. So the mission for our company is to give people the power to reach their destination. The way I think about that is not just how somebody's going to get from point A to point B, but how are they going to find the thing that's going to get them from point A to point B. And so this picture here has some relevance, which I'll get back to. I have 2 kids. These are not them. So there's a hook for hopefully keep you all interested. So this is a screen grab of our homepage, which has gone through a number of different design iterations, but the functionality has largely remained the same over several years, which is, CarGurus has historically been a very good destination for you. If you know the vehicle that you're looking for, we can connect you to a tremendous array of local inventory in your market, and we provide tremendous price transparency about that inventory so that you can make an informed purchasing decision. So if you know you want a Ford F-150, we're a great space for you to come to. Where we have historically not played is if you know you want a truck, but you don't know what truck you want, and you might be looking at a Ford F-150 or a Chevy Silverado or something else. We haven't historically helped consumers get down to that decision point. And that's where we saw, kind of with the advances of these large language models, an opportunity for CarGurus. So what is the opportunity that we saw? Well, for many people, a car is the second largest purchase that they're going to make in their lifetime after a home. And as such, it's a heavily considered purchase. People think about it a lot. They do a lot of research. They move into a consideration phase, maybe back to research before ultimately figuring out what vehicle they want and then where to buy it. And many times that purchase is not just driven out of want, but driven out of need, a life event, maybe a child going off to college or a growing family. And so it can be an exciting experience, but it can also be an overwhelming or intimidating experience. Car buying can be very complex. And so, and consumers don't always have all the time that they'd like. And so, how can we fulfill even better on our mission to help consumers reach their destination in a more seamless way? And we felt like, the advancements in Gen AI offered up an opportunity that we had not previously pursued. So why Gen AI? Large language models and kind of with GPT coming onto the scene, they gave us access to the ability to handle more complex queries than we ever have before. And that includes the ability to handle subjective inquiries, which is really important. You can think about in the automotive space, people think in the terms of, give me something that's fast or fun, safe, reliable, efficient. And the ability to take something like that and translate into a discrete product recommendation was a new capability that we wanted to explore. And that gave us the ability to kind of seamlessly blend research, discovery, consideration down into decision. And we know that consumers will often start on a website and in automotive often visit many websites during their process. They'll get to the kind of the limitations of one and then move on to the next. So you can think of, if you're researching vacuum cleaners on Consumer Reports, you might figure out what you want and then you'll head off to Amazon to buy it. And we felt like there was an opportunity for us to help consumers through more of their journey. And so what did we build? So this is live on the site now at cargurus.com/discover, and we're continually iterating and kind of furthering the capabilities. This is the opportunity when I would typically take you through an illustrative example of the power of this, but the nice thing is I actually have a real life example that happened to me about 8 months ago, and I'll kind of walk through that. And that was, I was driving from Western Massachusetts back to Boston with a good friend of mine. And during the ride, he was driving and I was sitting in the passenger seat. He kind of lamented to me that he had to buy a minivan. And he was not excited about the purchase, but his wife was pregnant with their third child. They have 2 boys, and he felt like it was the practical thing to do. And so I said, okay, well, what are you going to get? And he said, I have no idea. But being both, Massachusetts residents, he said it's got to be 4-wheel or all-wheel drive. And so I realized I had a beta version of this on my phone, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what we're building for. And so we said, all right, well, what are the minivans that come standard with 4-wheel or all-wheel drive? And we were able to kind of quickly narrow down, hey, it looks like the Toyota Sienna and the Chrysler Pacifica are both viable options that come standard with all-wheel drive. And he said, okay, and we kept driving and kind of talking, and he said, well, wait a second, what's the towing capacity of these minivans? Because I have a pop-up camper that's 2,500 pounds, and I want to be able to take the family camping, and if I get rid of this car, I'm going to need something that can tow the camper. And so that was kind of the next inquiry was, what are the, what is the towing capacity? Surprisingly capable 3,600 pound towing capacity on these minivans, which I had no idea about. So neither of them were eliminated from the consideration set. And so the next natural question was like, okay, well, what's the starting price of these vehicles? And so we kind of looked into that and found that the Toyota Sienna ended up having a little bit of a lower entry point, which felt important to him at the time, kind of with the growing family. And so he was, we started talking about that. And the next question was, well, what are the trim options available for the Toyota Sienna? And to be able to list those out and kind of understand what the value props of the various trims were. And so we kind of went through that list. And at that point in time, he said, okay, I think the Toyota Limited, the Sienna Limited is what I'm probably in the market for. And so then came the question of, well, are there any Toyota Sienna Limiteds in my market? And that, now down to the kind of fairway of what CarGurus has historically done really well, which takes us back to this picture, which is his 2 boys in their Limited. And this was 2 weeks after the conversation. So not here to represent that, all of that decisioning happened within that car ride, but in a 45-minute car ride, we were able to get from kind of life event and need to research, to discover, to consider, all the way down into purchase, which was a great proof point that we had the ability to help a broader array of consumers than we had previously. And so I'll hand it back to Parag to talk about some of the learnings internally for use of AI, but I figured I'd give you three learnings from our experience just to share. One is obviously with the power of these large language models, the opportunities are almost endless. And so one of the things that we found that was really helpful early with our small team was to define the boundaries of the experience we wanted to offer. Consumer car buying can go in a whole different array of options, and so we kind of said, hey, we're not going to deal with financing off the bat, we're not going to deal with trade-ins off the bat, we're going to really focus on kind of research and discovery, because that was an area of the funnel that we had not historically played in. Let the data drive the backlog. So one of the things, we had a robust set of features that we wanted to build. I got one of the engineers here who's been largely responsible for a lot of what you've been looking at. And much of it went out the window because we kind of really tried to dig into the queries that were coming in from the consumers and then use that to guide the functionality that we built next. So, really kind of trying to pay attention and actually leveraging AI to kind of synthesize all of those queries to give us thematic things to focus on as we expanded the functionality. And then the other thing that was interesting that we learned was many people, when we launched this back in, I guess it was 2024, towards the end of 2024, it was the first time that they were experiencing generative AI with us, and so they didn't know what to expect and how to engage with it. And so, while we would get some very robust queries about folks and family events and things that they were looking for, some would just be one word, civic. And what we learned is that we could prompt much deeper engagement by, in that first inquiry, giving a little bit more than what the user may be expecting. So, hey, there are a bunch of civics in your market. It looks like you're looking for an affordable four-door sedan. Here are some potential other options, et cetera, et cetera. And you could actually just see the conversation get much deeper and a lot more engagement, nurturing the consumer further down the funnel. So with that, I'll hand it back to
Thank you, Ben. I love the idea of the context retention and understanding like what the last question you asked was and what the follow-up questions are. I think that's great to kind of engage and understand all that and get that, like you said, rich data. So next I'm going to talk a little bit about our internal AI use. So I want to talk to you guys all about AI Forward. It's an initiative that we had at CarGurus, which was led by somebody who's in this room as well. And what we did was we dedicated a team to coordinate AI requirements, evaluation, organizational enablement, education, and measurement of adoption and business impact. So what we did is we essentially created enablement champions across the organization. And so across the organization, I mean, every function had an enablement champion, and those folks got together on a regular basis, and they started to talk about what they were doing with AI, how they were using AI, what are we doing with AI at the company, what are the different things that are coming out, and should these be approved? What is the process? So there was a lot of enablement and adoption that was happening, but it was happening from the ground up. So a lot of what you're seeing today is a top-down push for companies to become AI companies. Well, what we did was we decided to bring the right people together, the enthusiasts together within our company, and start kind of a bottoms-up effort as well to say, let's find the folks who are using AI every day, sitting in different teams and different departments, and let's empower them to be able to kind of go and talk to their peers and start to sell AI and start to sell the enablement and try to help them with adoption and finding different ways to utilize AI at the company. The next thing I'm going to talk about is also something very recent that we had. We had on September 4th, we launched the Fast and the Curious AI Day at CarGurus. It was a great success. We had quite a few vendors that joined us. So the way I started this is, the reason I put this title on here, it's the start of a quote from one of my favorite shows. Ben happens to have the quote on his laptop. Ben, what's the quote?
Be curious, not judgmental.
Be curious, not judgmental. And I think being curious is incredible, and I think it's something that we should all do. And as a new technology comes forward like generative AI, and I am specifically saying generative AI, AI has been around for a long time, back when I was in college, a long time ago. But what we did is we had this first flagship AI day. It was organizational wide, and we had different vendors who are providing AI features within their tools come into CarGurus and do different presentations. And we essentially just had everybody working on what they're doing today and showcasing what they're doing today. So we had workshops, we had show and tell sessions. We looked at, we wanted to highlight what the employees at CarGurus are doing with AI. Again, we want to continue to push enablement, adoption, and make sure that we're recognizing all the great work that people are doing with AI. We opened it to all departments, all skill levels, dedicated AI practitioners who are in this room today, to those just beginning their journey with AI tools, helping them understand what a prompt is, some basic things like that. We had presentations from our CarGurus AI enablement champions across the organization for successful deployments, lessons learned, and future opportunities. So, in conclusion, I think AI is here to stay. If anybody disagrees with that, I'd love to talk to you after this, because we really need to have an in-depth conversation. It's changed everything. It's not perfect, though. Let's make sure we keep a human in the loop. You have to keep a human in the loop. There's AI coding assistants, there's all of these AI features, but you have to fact check it. The concept of hallucinations, it's there, it's not going away, and you want to make sure that you're fact checking and you're not just using AI to vibe code, write code, and then deploy it to production. That can cause massive issues. So keep that human in the loop. Use it when it makes sense, not just to use it. This will help your projects to achieve success. Now, I know myself personally, I have shifted away from using search engines to about 95% of my queries go through an LLM, whether that be one of the 3 major ones that are out there or some of the smaller ones. Prompting is a skill. You've heard me say this several times. It's not something that is inherently easy for people to understand. There's the idea of certain prompts require details, other prompts require less detail, and knowing when to do what, when to ask what, and when to follow up. Enablement and empowerment matter. If you want to achieve success internally with AI, you have to find ways to enable people and empower people. If you just tell them, hey, this is a tool, you have to use it, how many people are going to use it? You can't be that prescriptive. You have to bring them along for the ride, and that's the direction we chose to take from an internal enablement perspective. Ben, anything you want to add?
Oh, I think you covered it.
I think we flew through this. Any questions?
Yeah.
So you talked about follow-up questions if somebody just put in the word civic. So I like that idea. Can you talk about how you figured out how to expand one word into more?
So I'm going to repeat the question.
Sure.
So the question was, you talked about one-word search, the question civic, and how did you take that one word and extrapolate other details from that? Is that fair?
Yeah, and so it's a good question, something we're still refining, but the idea was trying to kind of engineer that prompt so that within that first inquiry to try and generalize, particularly when we see, for us, a single word inquiry, it's a very specific trim level vehicle. And so we're able to say, all right, how do you abstract that to a make, model, local level, and then give some additional information that makes the consumer realize, hey, wait a second, I can actually do more here. And so then you'd start to get questions about either color preference or trim comparisons, and then what happens is what we would see is a really strong engagement when those types of consumers actually got all the way down to looking at specific vehicles.
Thank you.
How are you using AI in your customer success process, specifically around your partners? Are you kind of rolling your own? Are you using off-the-shelf tools? How much are you using it?
So I can
Repeat the question.
Yes, good question. Good job. Repeat the question. How are you using it within customer success? And essentially, we've rolled out an internal knowledge graph to allow people to engage with that knowledge graph in CS to answer questions. And we have folks who have built chatbots that engage in our internal documentation to make it a little quicker to find the answers that they're looking for. So I can't go into too much detail, but we are certainly utilizing it. And we're utilizing internal AI tooling to be able to search our documentation internally and get answers. And what we're also doing is we're building repositories of documentation very specific to answering questions about maybe specific features within our tools.
Are you using any of this to optimize your media exchange? I don't know if you have a media exchange network or something like that, but your advertisers presumably would have a field day with all this intentionality that
So the question is, and unfortunately, I don't think I can answer this question. The question was, I believe, how are you taking and utilizing AI within your marketing mix?
I mean, I think really it's just that you're now engaging with people at a solutions level, at a much more like esoteric level.
Yeah.
That is incredibly monetizable. Are you monetizing that? Do you plan to monetize?
I would say, yeah, we are being very careful about the collection of that data and the utilization of that data. And so I think we have a whole array of things that we're pursuing. So you can think about, one of the things that Airbnb does really well, right, is just if you think about the filters that sit across the top of the thing, give me wow, give me beachfront, give me whatever. So, the automotive space, we can see now like, fun, sporty, safe 5-door, or small SUVs is a category that there's a tremendous amount of search activity. And so that is a non-monetized example of that. But I would say, yeah, I think we are very much trying to harvest that data and find lots of different ways to use it, if that helps.
To kind of follow up on that, so have you noticed like a change in people's behavior on your site to be using your site as a research platform versus as like a car by list of cars? Like that person who's going through that might be doing research, but different than someone who's flipping cars. Like you seen changes in conversion rates?
So the question was, are we seeing people behave differently? Are they using our site more for research than maybe they were in the past to just buy a car?
Yeah, and the answer is absolutely. And I think what we're finding is that it is a different user. So, we have a bunch of mechanisms in which we have historically acquired deep funnel car shoppers, and we are not trying to take those folks who come in and know that they want a red Ford F-150 in their local market and pull them back up the funnel and say, well, wait a second, have you considered something else? But I think there is an opportunity to get in front of a whole bunch of different users who don't know. And I think for us, one of the interesting challenges internally is just making sure that people understand that traffic will behave differently, and from first inquiry to actual inquiry to a dealer. It's longer, right? You're not gonna see a search that translates into a dealer inquiry in a single session often. It might be over the course of 3, 4, 5. But what we're seeing is a much higher time on site and a ton of repeat engagement.
I may have missed it, but do you have any special data or model training or anything on, like, it's endemic to your model that they wouldn't be able to get from like your foundation models, off the shelf GPT-5, et cetera, for those like researching type of questions?
Yeah, I think honestly, like, we provide something that's comparable with this. I don't think our goal is to get really deep into the research, but have the capability there. There's definitely internal information that we have that is specific to us and to CarGurus that some of these foundational models don't have, because let's be honest, these foundational models are now starting to engage with companies to find different ways to train their models on that data specifically. And you see this coming out. I think it was Anthropic that recently came out and said that they want to start training on company data, which is significantly different than what they're doing with public data.
The big advantage is that when you have them on the site and they don't know specifically what they want, they haven't been to CarGurus before, you can keep them on the site longer. I mean, even if it is exactly the same as ChatGPT, and the question is when are they there and what do they need, and how can you keep them on the site so that they actually make a purchase while they're there?
Yeah, it's very similar to the way Google is increasingly leveraging AI and its results that keep you right on Google as opposed to, it's giving them more of the answers, tip of finger, and blending. I mean, we have a ton of first-party editorial content, we have videos, and so the question is how do we inject all of that into and build kind of the user experience around where the consumer is in that journey.
And what's interesting is if you do use that Gen AI search, is there's videos that do come up on what you may be searching for as well, not just the listings. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time.